All right, it's a little early in the day on a Thursday for me to be doing a live stream, but I figured now is probably as good a time as any with the subject matter. Today is the 19th, I believe, isn't it not? Yes, of May 2022. Welcome as you come in. I asked the question, the title here, who really is dividing us? And I don't mean that just in the sense of what's happening in the United States. I mean in the entire world. And the other day, I did a video where at the end of the live stream, it was the last live stream I did, at the very end, I explained the situation with the covering cherub that was thrown out of heaven. The covering cherub being the same individual that you would know as Lucifer, even though that's not the real name. Now, this isn't going to be a spiritual discussion, but I wanted you to know that what you're seeing here is total denial of unity amongst mankind. That's what you're seeing, and it's getting to the point where it's not only dangerous, it's deadly. So if you want to hear about this covering cherub, who was the one of the cherubs or cherubs, as you would say in Hebrew, who was so high up in the hierarchy of heaven that this being was one of the cherubs over the mercy seat in heaven, and he was cast out. It was cast out. That's the type of spirit that we're dealing with all of these different leaders over the entire world practically. Uh, Maybe a handful that aren't involved in this entire scheme of destruction. But at any rate, that's as most as I'm going to say about the spiritual aspect of it. In the description box below are three links to videos. And I'm not necessarily agreeing with all of the statements that they make. And I'm not saying, also, because they're there, I'm also not saying that there aren't similar situations that these other countries are doing to the United States. This is all being run by the intelligence and military communities. However, there are these basic central areas that are causing all the problems. And one of the big ones, as you all know, I've said it many, many times, is the Anglo-American alliance, NATO, the United States, and the Five Eyes countries. So I don't want to take a whole lot of time here because the videos that are in the links below are kind of lengthy, especially one of them. But I think it'll give you a lot of good background information that you're not getting from the Western media about what's really happening around the world, especially right now, of course, in Ukraine. There are things happening there and why they're happening that our government and the propaganda arm of our intelligence services, that being the mainstream media, and even some alternative media as well, which leads me to believe either they're totally inept or they don't understand what's going on actually, or they're part of the problem pretending to be alternative media when they're not. I really don't know. The fog of war is always a problem, and you have to understand that, and I do. But there are some things happening there, and especially why they're happening since the events of 2014 and the overthrow of the legitimate uh, government at that point by the United States, by NATO, and by Soros that I've talked about many, many times that has led to this situation that we have now. So I guess what I'm saying is it's real important to get the information in these three videos that are in the links below. One of them is from the Treason report. He's former military as well, does a very good job about what's going on in Ukraine. Brian of the New Atlas is a former U.S. Marine who now is in Thailand. I agree that especially with Brian, he gives excellent information, but you also have to bounce it off of where he is, okay? And I understand that. But I still think that it's really necessary for you to hi from Minnesota, rural Minnesota, great for you. Um, I still think it's necessary that you listen, because he brings up, Brian of the New Atlas brings up something that isn't talked about too often, and that's the National Endowment for Democracy that's run by the United States, particularly the CIA. And if you listen to what Brian says the United States National Endowment for Democracy is doing around the world, fomenting these disputations and these fights between different aspects of these different countries, the different social structures in the countries, how they exacerbate those problems rather than resolving them. It's a form of warfare without sending in troops. If you listen to what Brian says about how that's conducted, and then you look at what's been happening to us in the United States, you got to ask yourself a question. If the Chinese, for instance, were engaged in running Black Lives Matter, for instance, Antifa, all of these types of groups that are Marxist, if they were actually behind what's happening here, and the United States was concerned about Chinese interventions of a similar type that the National Endowment for Democracy does in Chinese territory, you would think that the United States would stand against it rather than embracing it, like the FBI bowing down to BLM and Antifa, like FBI Director Wray and USAG Garland saying, and Biden for that matter, saying that white supremacy is the greatest threat to America. If China was actually fully behind these Antifa and BLM, etc. organizations, the United States would be doing something to intervene, and they don't. They support them. As a matter of fact, if you protect yourself from these animals, you're considered to be the criminal. Look at that couple in St. Louis that all they did was stand outside their home with weapons. The lady didn't even actually have a real weapon. It was a replica. But the guy standing there did have an AR-15, and they were charged. Look at the mother in Idaho. I just tweeted this out again this morning. The mother in Idaho, Sarah Brady, who refused to allow or to keep her children off the playground, and she was arrested, and they're still going after her over this whole thing. Now that we know the entire background of this, the governor, Governor Little, and the AG of Idaho are still going after this little mother while they let real felons out of prison. Did China do that? Or is the National Endowment for Democracy, run by the CIA, also taking down America? I think the evidence shows who their real allies are. So it's not China running BLM and Antifa. It's the National Endowment for Democracy type of action being run against us as Americans to tear us apart, because what they're about, the intelligence communities, is total chaos, so they can destroy everything and then rise up out of the ashes. They are the real enemy. As I have said for so many years, the intelligence community and the military-industrial intelligence complex, and now the pharmaceutical companies, all part of that, are our greatest and most serious and most dangerous domestic enemy. And they do this all around the world. So I want you to listen to Brian. Again, he's the New Atlas. He's talking about the multi-dimensional warfare. I think it's the third one down. I'm not sure, but at any rate, and you'll see how that's being used against us as well. It's not just the U.S. doing it to these foreign countries. Our government is actually at war with us using the same principles. So they're at war with everybody. Brian's saying that the U.S. is at war with everybody, but he doesn't say that the U.S. is at war with its own citizens, which it is. And everything that we've seen in the last few years, especially since 9/11, and you can go back to Waco, you can go back to Ruby Ridge, we could do a lot of other things, talk about a lot of other situations. They are at war with mankind. Now, I want to address one other thing, and then I'll let you go, because those videos are kind of important. And again, look at it from a 60,000-foot view about what's going on here. The good information, I think, is that Russia is kicking ass there in Ukraine. They've been slow about it. I've been worried about them not interdicting the supply lines coming in, bringing more equipment, etc. But in fact, it may still work out. Am I for Putin and Russia? No, I'm against what the United States has done there and how they've used Ukraine as a money laundering, human trafficking, biolab, etc. And also breaking the Minsk agreements and also all the agreements we've made with Russia on not encroaching upon Russia's border. We've caused this, and if anybody will look at the history since 2014, you'll know that I'm right. So Russia, the Azovstal works are now, I think they're figuring there might be 300 left in there, something like 3,000, 1,700 to 3,000 have surrendered. Also, apparently all of the supposed gains that the Ukrainian army and their militias have made in the Donbass and on up on the eastern side there, all that has been stopped and they're now falling back. You're not getting this information from the MSM. You have to get it from people with inside information. And what I mean by inside is I don't have intelligence, contacts. I'm looking at these people who are on the ground there talking about what's happening. Erdogan of Turkey is standing in the way of Finland and Sweden getting into NATO, and that's a good thing. Finland and Sweden have no business getting into NATO, period, for no reason at all. There is no reason for them to get into NATO. They're being bribed. They're being forced by this U.S. and Five Eyes intelligence network for nefarious reasons. They're gonna cause a problem for themselves if they get into NATO, a serious problem. They really need not to do that. So these people talk about that as well that are in the description box below. One last thing I want to bring up, because our government is waging war against the American people. And I know you all know this, but I want to point it out. I want to ask the question, why is Biden shutting off all of our energy production and then going to a Russian ally in Venezuela asking for them to give us gas, give us oil? Do you not understand? Do you people in the FBI and in the DOJ and in the Department of Defense and in the State Department, do you understand? Do you see that there are forces that have Biden's ear? Of course, I'm being very specific now on Biden, but I know it's bigger than that. Where we're being put to the sword by our own leaders. They are committing treason and other criminal acts against the American people. How in God's name, notice I didn't say God's name, how in God's name, as Biden says, can he put America at risk on his fictitious, idiotic Green New Deal to stop supposed carbon, which is a natural part of our environment and part of the 4 parts of the life cycle? Why is he shutting down our energy and then going to a supposed enemy to get that oil? It isn't his idea. His brain is gone. It's, again, the idea of breaking up societies, communities, making it so, like my daughter can't even buy gas now to get to work. She can't afford it. And then they say, oh, we need to transition. Remember Psaki and Biden saying this? We need to transition out of carbon-based things, which is totally ridiculous because, again, it's part of the life cycle, number one. Number two, the electric grid is not going to sustain everybody going on to electric vehicles. It's not going to do it. A society needs a redundant source of energy. Petroleum, oil, electricity, nuclear if it's safe. In other words, just like in the military, when you have a military airplane, a fighter jet, for instance, There isn't just one hydraulic system in the airplane. There are redundant systems that back up everything in case something goes out. You have to run a country the same way. So Biden and his ilk are out to destroy you, the American people. Do not allow your sons and daughters to enlist in this God-forsaken military. It's done. It's over with. They are defending tyranny abroad and here at home. They're not defending liberty. They're defending the establishment. They're not defending you. And the establishment will willingly sacrifice their lives and their limbs and their resources, talking about your sons and daughters and yours, in order to destroy you, to think that you're doing something for this nation. You are, but not for the American people. So, Biden has proven that the real enemy isn't China. I'm not saying China isn't an adversary or Russia. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if China was behind what's happening in our country and the National Command Authority was really concerned about stopping China, the way they're using the National Endowment for Democracy against Russia and China and these other countries, if they were really serious about it, Antifa and the BLM would not be bowed down to by the FBI, by Biden, by the DOJ, and even by the Department of Defense. They're in on it, ladies and gentlemen. And our lazy-ass governors like Brad Little in Idaho and Governor Cox in Utah, and I could name a lot of others, we've got Abbott, all this. They're too picayunish and too cowardly to stand up against it, or they're complicit. There are no other answers to what's going on here. That's really all I've got. I did want to mention one other thing, and it is kind of a spiritual thing. A few videos back, I talked about the fact that, I had been taken up on a mountain, and a lot of people were thinking that I was referring to when Moses was taken up on a mountain and shown the promised land, but that he was shortly to die. He wasn't, or at least be taken to somewhere else and not actually going to the promised land. That wasn't the point of that, just so you know, okay? The point was that it looks like, from everything I can gather at this point, that really, I'm not saying I'm done, okay, speaking my mind, but that apparently what those things were to tell me is that I have accomplished what I was supposed to do. But everything else that happens is just icing on the cake, just a little more time to do little things, but that I reached that peak because that's really all the power I was given, was to speak out, and I've done that. Just like I am today. This is dangerous stuff to do this, but so what? I really do, honestly, I really have more awe for God than I do for these demons who run the nations. These, and again, looking at Psalms 82 and 89, these gods, and even called such, who rule unjustly and are being given the opportunity to show their unjust, wicked, evil ways, and they will be thrown down eventually, just like the covering cherub was thrown down and is now here giving his spirit to all of these evil men and women that are running this thing. And I include Hillary Clinton on that, of course, too. She's small potatoes, really. She's just a front lady. Alrighty, that's all I've got. Probably talked too much. Roy is correct. Military is not for yours, and my freedom military is for the establishment. That's exactly right. If the military was for you, in Russia they've built nuclear subterranean facilities for their people so they can survive a nuclear blast. Nowhere in the United States is anything like that available. It is for the government, the continuity of government situation, right? But not for the people. And the excuse is that it's because of our nuclear umbrella. Nobody's going to attack us. Well, no, what that is they don't give a crap about you. They really do want you taken out of the equation so they can claim all this for themselves and then destroy the rest of it. Just like Harari said, they want to hack all life on Earth, not just mankind, but trees, grass, animals, anything carbon-based. Change it into a hackable life form so they can control it. If there's a guy out there who is anything like this fallen cherub, covering cherub, it's people like Harari. It's people like Klaus Schwab. It's people like Biden. And yes, I'll say it, it's even people like Trump. That's how serious it is. All right. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. I know I get pretty intense, but my passion is real. My compassion is real. What you see is what you get. Go watch those videos. I think it'll give you some insight. Again, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything, but you have to see all of these, how all these different things are working together. And these folks do a really good job of that, explaining it. And then apply it to ourselves. Don't just look at it from the point of view that these weapons are being used against China or Russia. Realize that they're being used against you by your own supposed governments. That's happening as well. All right. Y'all take care. Out here for now.